Hello there, and welcome back to the Red Giant YouTube channel and videos with your host, me, today, Dave Simpson. Hello there, everybody. Before we get started in this video, I'm going to say it, people of YouTube, please, if you haven't subscribed to his channel yet, please do. Please click the subscribe button down below. It will really help us out no end. If you have subscribed, thank you so much, legendary human beings. Thank you very much indeed. Anyway, let's get into today's vid. So, the last vid I was in, I spoke about what I used on the upcoming Red Giant album, You Say, I Say. And I spoke about the guitars, I showed you the pedals, I showed you the amp I used, and just basically kind of like I had a bit of a waffle about that. Shut up, phone. And today I thought I would show you some of the sounds and talk about them a bit. And also talk about some of the, like in the first video I did where I was talking about what I used, I mentioned I didn't use the orange at all because it just didn't work. For the sound we were after, the orange just didn't work. It just didn't cut. So I used the Marshall MG here instead. By the way, do you like the branding? I don't know if you can see that, but yeah. Anyway, and also, but you definitely won't be able to see that. But anyway. But yeah, I want to talk about like some of the things I had to take into consideration and some of the compromises I had to do, obviously to make myself fit in the sonic spectrum of the band. So, first thing, like I say, was I didn't use the orange. The reason for that is the orange, as much as I love it to bits, and I do love it to bits, it's one of my all-time favourite amps, its low end and its mids sit pretty much in the high mids and low end of Queenie's bass tone. Now, the problem that makes is that it makes her bass sound muddy and dark and kind of like gets rid of definition, if you will, because it's interfering. It's two frequencies butting heads, and it's just not good. You don't want that. And the low mids are getting in the way of the high thing, and what that's doing is making my guitar sound disappear. So the low end of the orange was interfering and making her bass tone muddy and dark, and just kind of sounding just kind of not very good. It wasn't quite right. And then the kind of like the mid range of the orange was kind of like it didn't cut through enough, and as a result of that, the guitar sounded very weak and just kind of like disappeared. You know, it just didn't. It wasn't cutting at all. It wasn't finding its sonic space at all. So when we plugged in the Marshall and found that it just had that mid-focused thing exactly where it needed to be, it was just like, you know, oh, thank God for that. You know, because I thought I was really going to have to go, right, I'm going to have to change everything then. I'm just going to have to, like, figure this out. Luckily, I didn't. I say the Marshall, with a certain setting that I've got, which I'll tell you in a sec, really cut through and found my sonic space. Because also, like I say, Queenie's bass tone's huge. It's very distorted, very, very big. John Joe's drum kit is also, it sounds very big. And John Joe eats a lot of frequencies because he's got his cymbals, which are all high. You know, there's some obviously like lower down, but they're all still in the treble frequencies and presence frequencies. Then you got your bass drum, you got your snare, hi-hat, toms. There's a lot of frequencies eaten there. And then you've got obviously Queenie's bass tone, which has a lot of low end and a lot of low mids, and also a fair bit of high to it as well. So I was like, well, I need to find where I sit, and I need to compromise on that. So if the orange ain't doing it, I'm not going to use the orange. I'll use another amp. And again, we've actually experimented over the last couple of years with finding the right guitar amp for the job. We tried the Boss Katana, we tried the Fender Super Reverb. The Fender Deluxe worked really nicely, but just wasn't quite big enough to keep up with Queenie's monstrous bass tone. It was just a bit too small. What else did we try? High Watt. What else did we try? We tried a couple of other amps as well, Sub-Zero, but none of them. And again, obviously, yeah, the Super Crush, obviously CL120 was my main amp, but none of them were they weren't kind of cutting, and especially live, you really, you know live when I'm just like, I'm not there, and I really started to struggle to hear myself as the band's sound has evolved, as that's evolved to this album that's coming out, you're going to hear where we are with it sonically, and the orange just wasn't the sound. And then when I just randomly plugged into, I used the Marshall one day, all of a sudden there it was. like everything just cut through. Everything was just like, that's where it is. Because if you think like this is your sonic spectrum here, this is the lowest, this is the high. Guitar is going to fit into a very small pocket, and it's all in the mid ranges. You don't want too much treble, you don't want too much low. So that brings me quite neatly at how I set this Marshall up to fit in the band. So I always use OD1 on the Marshall MG. I don't use the clean channel, I don't use OD2. Great channels, I just don't. For me getting my main core sound out of pedals, this is how I set the Marshall to be clean. And again, for some reason, the way this interacts with the Marshall Governor, which I'll show you in a sec, it just sounds right and it just cuts perfectly. So we're on OD1, and I've gain set really low. At this point in time, it's like, if that's 0 and that's 1, it's in the middle. So it's like just shy of 8 o'clock, if you will. So that's where I have the gain. Bass, I have no bass dialed in at all. Again, I find if I turn the bass up, then, again, we're getting into Queenie territory. We're starting to interfere. It gets in the way, makes everything dark, muddy, and undefined, and it just doesn't sound good. And again, that was the problem with the Orange. Even with the bass turned off on the CR120, it still had a lot of low end. It was still very boomy, and it just kept fighting. It just kept fighting, and you don't want to be fighting. You want to be, and you've got to use what makes your band sound the best and gives you that sound, and also gives you your sound, but in the frequencies that make it work. So no bass at all. The middle dial, I've got nearly cranked. I've got it about 2 o'clock, so it's about 8 on the dial. 7 on the dial, and that's where the cut's coming from. That is really where the cut's coming from, because I've got no treble, no contour, and the channel volume's maxed out. I do run the reverb about 9 o'clock. Sometimes I actually have it off. Again, that's another thing that if I put too much reverb into my sound, especially with the CR120, it just kind of, again, became a mush. It didn't have any cut, it didn't work. So, on its own, it sounds like this. But there is literally barely any, if any, low end to it. It's very glassy. And then you get the humbucker. Still, not loads of low end. Barely any low end at all. Again, because if I put any low end in, gets in the way of Queenie, starts fighting, makes a mush. So, but because there's no low end on the amplifier, when I kick on the Marshall Governor, which does have a load of low end, it's very even. And there's a lot more low end with that pedal, but not enough to get in the way. Now, if I turn up the bass, so the bass is now maxed out, sounds really good, but there's too much low end, and that low end is going to interfere with the bass and the bass drum, and it's going to take the power away from your guitar. So this sound, it just had the perfect amount of cut, and again, it just sat me exactly where I needed to be in the sonic space of the band. It didn't get in the way of my vocal or Queenie's vocal, didn't get rid of the bass, didn't get rid of drums, just was perfect. And again, this Marshall, it just sat perfectly. Like the Orange, it was just too dark and woolly. So, this is my core tone for Red Giant. It's the Marshall Governor 2 Plus, with my Chapman or my other guitars. It's got teeth, but it's still quite warm and smooth, just sounds great. And again, when I go to the neck pickup, the single coil, it's still really fast. It's just, you know, it's quite a very focused. It's a very focused sound. You know, when you're in the room with it, you know you're in the room with it. But when you blend it with a band, it just is exactly where it needs to be. You know, it really is. But you can hear there's no low end. Well, there is, but not tons and tons and tons of it. I'm not, you know, it's not a humongous guitar tone. But because it's not kind of like, you know, massive, it sounds bigger. If that makes any sense, because it's got cut, it gets out the way of everything else. And because of that, it sounds way bigger. Because it actually, you can hear it. I hope this is making some kind of sense. I've just realised this might not make any sense whatsoever, but hopefully it does. But it just sounds great. And especially when you play a chord, you can hear all the strings. You know, and again, that's something that I really wanted. I didn't really want to sacrifice the warmer, kind of more mellow sounds that I like. So we had to find a way to do that. And again, the Marshall gave me that, which I'm very, very happy about. So, and again, it just still gives me that ability to have the guitar to sing. With the added bonus, I'm not getting in the way of Queenie or John Joe. It's great. It's wicked. So that's my core tone for Red Giant. And here's a riff. That's on the new album. So anyway, but it just worked really nicely and just sat exactly where I needed it to sit, and just sounded great. And again, I'm not compromising too much on what I want for the guitar to sound like. You know, it still sounds the way I want it. So that's my core sound. That is, I would say, up to 85% of the songs, that's the main rhythm guitar tone. And again, one of the main things for me with a rhythm guitar tone is it has to palm mute nicely. You know, you need that percussive kind of thing. I want it to do that kind of like really punchy percussive thing, but be really tight at the same time. So if I turn the reverb off, there's no kind of like spill. It just stops dead. You know, it's just a really tight guitar sound. But again, so really percussive, but not too harsh and not too in your face. Anyway, so that's basically, like I say, 85% of the time. There are a couple of songs where I use a clean tone, and that's just my golden plexi, which is, again, just bump. This is the amp on its own. This is the golden plexi on. Just fattens it up and just, again, beefs it up a bit. And it sounds really cool. And again, if you go to the humbucker, it's like a mild overdrive. And it's a little bit darker than the Governor. But when you combine them, it just goes into singy territory. They just work so well together. And the same thing goes for the DS2. There is a song on the new album, and it's called Free Me, where I use the Marshall Governor and the DS2 on a neck pickup of my other guitar, not this one. It's in E flat, and both them together, again, massive sound, but because I've got no bass and the way the tone is kind of shaped, it doesn't get in the way, but it sounds like this. That's not the song, by the way. That's just me messing around, but I'm just showing you the sound. It's massive. But because, again, of the sonics, the way the EQ, the whole rig's kind of EQ'd, that still isn't getting in the way of the bass. You know, you can still hear everything over while that's going on, and it's still got cut. Again, that was really important, massively important when you're playing a band, is to find where you belong sonically. So yeah, that's that. So the DS2 comes on for mainly solos. Again, just to make it sing. I can put a delay on as well. But I don't use the delay that much, to be perfectly honest with you. It's kind of like a... Delay for me is kind of like, if I feel like it, I'll put it on. But I never have it as like, you know, oh, that needs to be on for this song kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like however I feel. If I don't want it on, I don't have it on. I don't really use delay a great deal, to be honest with you. I think I use reverb more than that. So anyway, coming back to the call tone. So again, that's just the Marshall Governor. With a little bit of reverb from a Marshall. I also, on my Zoom G2, have more reverb on the expression pedal. So I can push that. This is just without. If I push it all the way up, I get loads. None. And that's just something I really enjoy. Just, yeah, again, as and when I feel like it. Comes in more in kind of like bluesy stuff. If we're doing like we've got a slow blues kind of track on the new album, and that's kind of what I kind of just have it kind of set halfway for that. Yeah, just ride the volume control of the guitar. Wah-wah pedal for this album. The wah pedal that I really needed was the Ibanez wah, because of this. It has a bass wah function. So normally, this is the normal function, but it has this. It has the ability to do this. And one of the songs had a guitar solo where I was like, I need that sound. So I'm using the Ibanez wah now. It's the Ibanez wah V2. I love it to bits. And again, that just I use the bass wah function for one song, and I use just the normal function for some others. I don't use it a great deal, actually. I think there's maybe about 4 songs with wah in it. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember now. But yeah, something like that. Again, but it is kind of an as and when thing. If I want to use it, I'll use it. Nothing's ever set in stone apart from the Marshall Governor giving me my core tone. Again, it's kind of moved now from a Golden Plexi being on all the time to the Marshall Governor being on all the time, and I just ride the volume control with it. It's shifting. It's very, very cool. It's evolving. So yeah, I've got the Cloudburst on the pedal board, but I barely use it. Another pedal I do use is the Mel 9. I use it on the high choir sound, and it gives me this. And it's really subtle. You can't really hear it, but if I turn it off, well, if I play a chord and then turn it off, you'll hear the guitar go. Boop. It'll slim down, and then I'll turn it back on again. So this is with it on, turning it off, on, and basically, I just use it for like big chord kind of things. If I feel like, you know. Queenie's got some bass solos, and it's quite nice to just fill out kind of bits like that. In relation to, it just makes it sound bigger. And I love the Mel 9. Absolutely love it to bits. It's just one of those pedals. So I say I do have a Cloudburst, but I don't actually use it. I don't think I used it at all on this album, actually, at all. So there we go. Another thing I do use is a harmony effect inside the Zoom G2. it's not actually set for this tuning, but it's in E flat minor. And it's just set to thirds, to harmonise in thirds. I actually didn't use the effect on the album. I just harmonised the guitars, like double tracked them. But live, that's what I'll be using for a certain song. Again, that's a song specific effect. Same as the bass wire is song specific, which I'll definitely forget. And then I'll do the guitar solo live, and I'm like, oh, I didn't turn the wah pedal to the bass thing. Anyway. Another effect I have is this, and this is another effect from the Zoom, which is it's not quite a whammy. It's a pitch shifter, but not quite. If I leave it on like toe down, you can actually still hear the original guitar signal. Oh, there. Because I can actually blend it in. It's not like a whammy. I did use a whammy effect on one song, but it's not going to be live. It was just an overdub. But this is an effect for a song called Free Me. And I can say, it's like a whammy, but not a whammy. If that makes any sense. Anyway, but that's another effect I use, and that's about it, really. To be honest with you, like I said, I don't, because I sing so much, I need to keep it as simple as possible. So less going on at my feet, the better. Because I've got to think about lyrics and that kind of thing. So so the simpler the better. Like leaving the Marshall Governor on, just riding volume control makes no ends of ease when it comes down to doing what we do. So. And it just sounds great. I found distortion pedals I love, but I've yet to find a distortion pedal that sounds better than the Marshall Governor 2 Plus. Just sounds immense on its own. That's nothing else. That's just literally the Governor on. But yeah, there you go. I think that's covered everything. So they're the main sounds I use, and that's like I say, just talking a bit more of like why I didn't use the orange and use the Marshall instead. Just because again, you need to find your sonic space, and a guitar's sonic space in a band isn't very big. Because you've got a bass. You've got drums. If you've got other things in the band as well, you need to consider that as well. So you've really got to find where you belong, sonically. But at the same time, don't compromise too much on what you want as a tone. I still wanted my guitar tone to be quite warm, not, but still cutting, you know what I mean? I didn't want it to be too in your face and nasty. It still needed to kind of like sing and that kind of thing. So, But the Marshall gave me the ability to accomplish that, like thank gravy. Like I say, we've tried every amp I own, and the Marshall was the last one. Because I was like, I'm not going to use it. I used it for years. I'm not going to use that. We'll find a way to make these other amps work. And it just never did. And when I just randomly just went, I'll try the Marshall then. I was like, ah! And like I say, the heavens, it was this. It was like, rehearsal, let me try the Marshall. Oh. Ably demonstrated by the man. Well, it wasn't really worth it, was it? Anyway, you get what I mean? But again, there you go. Hope I made some kind of sense. And like I say, just bear that in mind if you're playing in a band, be aware of your sonic space, where you belong. Don't get in the way of your other band members. You need to find where you are. But find where you are without compromising too much on your tonal vision, if you will. Tonal vision sounds like a weird condition. That rhymed. Stop it! Ah! Anyway, I hope I made some kind of sense. But yeah, I hope it's been somewhat informative and interesting. I'm just going to do a little quick outro jam for you now, using some of these sounds. I don't know what it's going to be. We'll find out in a sec. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for watching. Like I say, if you haven't subscribed to his channel, please do. We really need your support on here. So if you can click the subscribe button below, that'd be really appreciated. Thank you so much. If you have subscribed, legendary. Thank you so much indeed. Like I say, I'm going to try and keep videos up. Maybe once. I'm going to try and do one every week. And obviously, you know, other band members, John, Joe and Queenie, will be doing videos as well. It won't all just be my stupid, ugly face all the time. But, you know, it depends on when they can get around to doing videos. But yeah, I'm going to try and do one for every week, and hopefully, and in them I'll keep you updated on what's going on and just show you things as they're progressing, so to say. So anyway, thank you very much indeed for watching. Yeah, we'll see you again at some point, I'm sure. I hope this has been interesting. And I'll see you. Goodbye now. Oh, and please go and like all the other stuff down below in the description box. There's links to where we are and whatever. Bye.